If you are a father or mother, feeling the weight of silence, feeling the distance growing between you and your child, then listen to me. I am a father too. I have walked through the years of youth, and now my children have grown, stepping into their worlds. But as they moved forward, the space between us expanded. They no longer sought my advice the way they once did. They no longer shared their thoughts like before. And I understand. That feeling isn't easy. We raised them, we guided them. We gave them everything, believing that love, our love, would always be enough. We thought that our sacrifices, our presence, and our care would be remembered and honored. But one day we wake up and realize the dynamic has changed. The conversations become brief. Their patience with us seems thinner. And suddenly, we find ourselves standing outside of their world, looking in. I used to see it only through the lens of a father, the one who sacrificed, the one who loved, and yet the one who didn't receive the respect he expected. But then, I remembered something. I too was once the child. I too was once young, chasing my ambitions, unaware of how my silence affected my parents. I too got lost in my world, not realizing they were waiting, hoping, feeling forgotten. That is why I'm here today. Not to blame, not to dwell on the loss, but to share something that will change everything. What we need is not control, not force, not demands. We need to let go of expectations that bring suffering. We need to find our peace instead of seeking it from them. This is about self-mastery, about reclaiming your inner strength, about learning how to stand in your power so that one day they will look back and see you not as a burden, not as an obligation, but as an unshakable force of wisdom and grace. This is what Stoicism teaches us. If you are ready to step into that strength, then stay with me. And if you know someone, a parent, a friend, a loved one, who needs to hear this, share this message with them. Because what you are about to learn may be the most important lesson of your life. Let's begin. 1. Detach without disconnecting. Love is not a chain. It is not something you hold onto so tightly that it suffocates. But for many parents, love has become exactly that, a desperate grip, a need for validation, a silent expectation that their children will love them the way they once did. And when that expectation is not met, the pain is unbearable. I know this because I have felt it. Though my children have grown and created their own lives, the heart of a father never stops beating for them. I think of them. I remember them. I wonder if they remember me the same way. But here's the truth. Real love does not demand. It does not beg. It does not attach itself to an outcome. This is where detachment becomes your greatest strength. Detaching is not the same as giving up. It is not turning cold, nor is it walking away from your child. Detachment means you love them without needing them to validate that love. Imagine the sun. It shines every day, warm, constant, unwavering. It does not ask for thanks. It does not demand recognition. It simply gives light because that is its nature. Be like the sun. Love your children without making their response the condition for your happiness. This is what Stoicism teaches us. Epictetus said, "It's not things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them." It is not your child's silence that causes you pain. It is what you believe their silence means. You assume they don't care. You assume they've forgotten you. You assume they don't respect you. But what if none of that is true? What if they are simply lost in their world, the same way you once were? When you detach, you free yourself from these destructive thoughts. You release the suffering created by your expectations. Expectation is a cage. You expect calls. You expect gratitude. You expect respect. And when those expectations are not met, it destroys you. But tell me, who built that cage? You did. You conditioned your happiness on their actions. You made their behavior the measure of your worth. But here's the harsh reality. You do not control them. You only control yourself. Seneca wrote, "The greatest wealth is a poverty of desires." If you stop expecting, you stop suffering. If you stop demanding, you stop feeling rejected. Your role as a parent is not to chase your child's love. It is to be love itself, strong, steady, unshaken. So what do? First, recognize the pain you feel, but do not let it define you. Accept that your child is on their journey, just as you were once on yours. Second, let go of the illusion of control. You cannot force love, you cannot force respect, but you can embody the values that command it naturally. And finally, choose to love without expectation. Not because they deserve it, not because they ask for it, but because you are a parent. And a parent's love, like the sun, shines regardless of whether or not it is seen. 2. You don't need acceptance to be respected. Respect is not something you beg for. It is not something you earn by trying to please. And yet, so many parents fall into this trap, adjusting their words, softening their stance, doing everything they can to remain in their children's good graces. They bite their tongue when they feel disrespected. They allow boundaries to be crossed. They keep giving, hoping that one day their child will turn around and say, "I see you, I appreciate you." But that day never comes. And when it doesn't, the pain settles in. The resentment builds. You start asking yourself, why don't they respect me? Why don't they value everything I have done? But here's the truth. Respect is not about being liked. It is about being unwavering in who you are. Many parents make the mistake of thinking that if they keep their children happy, they will gain their admiration. They think that if they accommodate, if they sacrifice, if they make life easier, their children will recognize their worth. But this is a dangerous illusion. A parent who demands nothing, sets no boundaries, and accepts every behavior is not seen as strong. They are seen as desperate, and desperation never commands respect. True respect is earned not through seeking approval, but through demonstrating unshakable character. Think of the people you respect most. Do you respect them because they always agree with you? Because they always did what made you happy? Or do you respect them because they stood firm in their values, even when it was difficult? Because they made decisions with integrity, not to win favor? Your children do not need to agree with you to respect you. They do not need to validate your choices. What they need to see is that you live with dignity, regardless of whether they approve or not. Marcus Aurelius said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." This is the core of it all. If you want to be respected, stop chasing it. Stop molding yourself into what you think will make them love you. Live as someone who commands respect, not through force, not through control, but through sheer presence, strength, and consistency. If you demand validation, you weaken yourself. But if you stand firm in who you are, you create something far more powerful, an image of a person who cannot be swayed, who does not crumble under the weight of rejection, who does not shrink when they are overlooked. And one day your children will see that. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but over time, they will come to understand that you never wavered, that your strength was not conditional on their approval, and that you carried yourself with dignity even when they failed to acknowledge it. That is when respect finds its way back to you. Not because you asked for it, not because you begged for it, but because you became the kind of person who does not need to ask. 3. Noise control. I remember the moment clearly. I sat across from my son, frustration bubbling inside me, trying to explain the importance of respect. I thought if I just make him understand, if I could lay out my years of wisdom, he would see my point of view. But the more I spoke, the less he listened. My words, meant to bridge the gap between us, only seemed to push him further away. And then, silence. A silence that stretched across days, weeks, until suddenly, I realized I was no longer speaking to him. I asked myself, should I raise my voice? Should I demand that he listen? But then I saw the truth. The louder I spoke, the less he heard. Many parents believe that more words equal more understanding. If they just explain better, reason harder, and demand more, their children will finally listen. But that is not how the human mind works. People do not respond to noise. They respond to presence. Silence can be a weapon, but it can also be a wall. When children pull away, many fathers and mothers react by shutting down, by using silence as a form of punishment. They withdraw their warmth, their attention, their patience, thinking that if they create enough distance, their children will realize their mistake and come back. But that rarely happens. Silence, when used as a weapon, does not bridge the gap. It widens it. The key is not to speak more. The key is in speaking less, but with more precision. Words, like arrows, must be aimed with intention. A poorly placed word can wound, but a well-placed silence can make someone lean in, listen, and reflect. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Think before you speak. Let your words be measured and only used where they add value." Many times, the right words spoken at the right time carry more power than 1,000 spoken in frustration. Instead of bombarding your children with lectures, instead of repeating yourself over and over in hopes they will finally hear you, pause. Let them feel the weight of their actions. Let your presence, your example, and your silence speak louder than any words ever could. When your child distances themselves, when they disrespect you, resist the urge to react impulsively. Instead, take control of the one thing you can, your response. Do not chase. Do not yell. Do not demand. Speak only when the moment is right, and when you do, let your words be firm, intentional, and filled with purpose. Because respect is not commanded through volume. It is commanded through restraint, through wisdom, through the ability to hold back when others expect you to lash out. And when you master this, something incredible happens. Your children start to notice the power in your stillness. They sense the strength behind your silence. They realize that you are not engaging in the noise of the world, you are standing above it. And in time, they will come to respect that, more than any raised voice ever could. 4. Rewrite the story you tell yourself. We suffer more in imagination than in reality. Seneca. Your child doesn't call, they cancel plans, they don't respond the way you hope, and almost immediately, your mind starts writing a story. They don't care. They don't respect me. They've forgotten everything I've done for them. But is that the truth? Or is that just the version of reality you've chosen to believe? For years, I told myself this exact story. My child was growing distant, and I convinced myself that it was because they no longer valued me. That somehow I had failed, that I had given everything only to be cast aside. Every unanswered message, every missed phone call felt like a rejection, and the more I believed that story, the more pain I felt. Until one day, I did something different. Instead of assuming the worst, I stopped and asked myself, what else could be true? What if my child wasn't ignoring me out of disrespect, but because they were overwhelmed with their struggles? What if their silence wasn't rejection, but exhaustion? What if, instead of assuming that their distance meant they didn't love me, I considered that they might be dealing with things they didn't know how to express? The human mind is a storyteller. It takes incomplete information and fills in the blanks, and if you're not careful, it will turn small moments into devastating betrayals, even when no betrayal exists. Epictetus once said, "Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of things." Your child's behavior is not the source of your suffering. Your interpretation of their behavior is. Think of it this way. When you were young, did you always call your parents as often as you should have? Did you always appreciate them the way they deserved? Or were you, like most people, lost in the chaos of your own life, believing there would always be more time? When I looked back at my own life, I saw myself in my child. I saw the times I had been distant, not because I didn't love my parents, but because I was too consumed by my struggles to notice theirs. And that realization changed everything. This is the power of rewriting the story you tell yourself. Instead of assuming rejection, assume complexity. Instead of assuming malice, assume struggle. Instead of assuming they don't care, assume they may not know how to show that they do. And when you do this, something shifts. The pain you've been carrying starts to loosen its grip. The resentment fades. You realize that your suffering was never about their actions, it was about your expectations. So the next time your child seems distant, before you let your mind spiral into hurt, stop. Breathe. Ask yourself, what other story could be true? Because the story you choose will define the way you feel, and the way you feel will define the way you respond. 5. Let go of expectations for a more peaceful relationship. For years, I carried an invisible weight, expectations. I never said them out loud, but they were always there. I expected my children to call often. I expected them to show gratitude. I expected them to treat me with the same respect and attentiveness I had given them. But when those expectations weren't met, I felt something I never thought I would feel toward my own children. Disappointment. At first, I justified it. Of course I should expect respect. Of course they should be grateful. After everything I've done, isn't that the least they owe me? But here's the harsh truth. Expectation is the seed of suffering. The more I expected, the more I set myself up for pain. Every unanswered call, every forgetful moment, every perceived slight wasn't just an action. It became proof in my mind that I was being taken for granted. But was that true? Or was I the one creating my suffering? The mind is a cruel architect when it comes to expectations. It builds walls where none exist, sees insults where there is only indifference, and turns simple actions into personal betrayals. But the reality is far less dramatic. My children weren't acting out of malice. They were simply living their lives, just as I had once lived mine. This is where Stoicism offers a way out. Seneca said, "The greater the expectation, the greater the disappointment." If you build your happiness on how others behave, you are placing your peace in their hands. And that is a dangerous place for it to be. The moment I stopped expecting, something strange happened. I stopped feeling hurt. I stopped seeing their actions as a reflection of my worth. I stopped measuring love in phone calls and visits. And the irony? When I let go of expectations, the relationship improved. The tension eased. The resentment faded. I started seeing my children as they were, not as I wished them to be. Letting go of expectations is not about giving up on your children. It's not about pretending you don't care. It's about releasing the need for them to validate you. It's about loving them for who they are, not for who you think they should be. So I ask you, what are you holding on to? What silent expectations have you built that are poisoning your heart? Because the moment you let go, you free yourself. You free your children, and you open the door to a relationship built on something far stronger than obligation: true understanding. 6. Compassion begins with understanding their journey. A child's silence is often mistaken for indifference. A missed call is seen as a rejection. A short reply feels like disrespect. But what if the distance you feel is not about you at all? What if your child is not pulling away because they don't love you, but because they are carrying burdens they don't know how to share? People in pain retreat. They shut down. They build walls, not because they don't care, but because they are trying to survive. A child overwhelmed by life cannot always express love the way a parent hopes. And yet, so many parents take this personally. They react with frustration, with disappointment, with a sense of betrayal. But disappointment only deepens the divide. Understanding, however, builds a bridge. The first step is to remove yourself from the equation. This is not about your worth as a parent. This is about what they are experiencing. What pressures are they under? What struggles do they face? What unseen battles are consuming their mind? The moment you stop demanding love in the form you expect and start recognizing love in the way they are capable of giving, everything shifts. This is where Stoicism becomes essential. Epictetus reminds us, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak. Instead of assuming, listen. Instead of reacting, observe. Instead of expecting, understand. Pain is not always loud. Sometimes it looks like silence. Sometimes it looks like avoidance. Sometimes it looks like a child who doesn't reach out, not because they don't want to, but because they don't know how. If you meet that silence with anger, you push them further away. But if you meet it with patience, you give them a reason to return. Compassion does not mean accepting disrespect. It does not mean tolerating mistreatment. What it means is choosing wisdom over resentment. It means pausing before you assume. It means recognizing that just as you are struggling with their distance, they may be struggling with something even greater. So take a breath before you judge. Take a moment before you react. See beyond their actions and into their reality. Because when you understand, you no longer need to demand. And when they feel understood, they no longer need to run. In the end, love is not about forcing a connection. It is about creating the kind of space where connection happens naturally. Not with control, not with expectation, but with the quiet, steady power of understanding. 7. The path to rebuilding the relationship. A broken relationship is not repaired overnight. It does not end with a single conversation, nor does it heal simply because you wish it would. True change takes time, and the first step is understanding that rebuilding starts within you, not with them. Many parents wait. They wait for their children to reach out. They wait for an apology. They wait for the moment when things return to how they once were. But waiting does not build bridges. Action does. And the most powerful action you can take is not to chase, not to demand, but to cultivate your peace. When you find inner stability, everything around you begins to shift. A person who radiates calmness commands respect. A A person who is no longer controlled by resentment creates space for reconnection. Your energy, your presence, your ability to remain centered. These things shape the dynamic between you and your child far more than words ever could. Lao Tzu once said, "The best fighter is never angry." The battle you are facing is not won through force, not through emotional outbursts, not through proving a point. It is won through patience, self-control, and quiet, unwavering strength. Let go of the need to be right. Let go of the urge to fix everything immediately. Instead, focus on becoming the kind of person your child wants to come back to. Not out of obligation, but because your presence feels safe, steady, and free of judgment. If you feel resistance from them, do not push. Pushing only reinforces distance. Instead, practice stoic stillness. Give them space without disappearing. Be present without being demanding. And most importantly, do not let their reaction dictate your peace. You cannot control when they return. You cannot control how they respond, but you can control the way you show up. And when you choose patience over frustration, understanding over expectation, self-respect over desperation, you shift the entire foundation of the relationship. One day they will look back. They will see the way you carried yourself, the way you remained strong without becoming bitter, the way you stayed open without chasing. And in that realization, the door to reconnection will begin to open. Not because you forced it, not because you demanded it, but because you became the kind of person they wanted to return to. 8. Master yourself. You cannot control how others treat you. You cannot force them to listen, to care, or to acknowledge your presence. But you can control yourself. You can master your emotions, your reactions, and the way you move through the world. And when you do, everything around you begins to shift. Many parents place their happiness in their children's hands. They wait for the call, the visit, the validation. When it comes, they feel whole. When it doesn't, they feel abandoned. But living this way is dangerous. It places your peace in something you cannot control. And the Stoics teach us that suffering is not caused by external events, but by our attachment to them. The strongest person in the room is not the loudest. It is not the one who demands attention. It is the one who remains calm, unshaken, and whole, whether they are acknowledged or not. Think of an ancient tree standing in the middle of a storm. The wind howls. The rain beats down. Yet the tree does not beg the storm to be gentle. It does not collapse in frustration. It stands firm because its roots run deep. Its strength comes from within, not from the conditions around it. This is what it means to master yourself. Now think about how most parents define themselves. They build their identity around their children's approval, their presence, and their need for guidance. And for a time, this role is clear. A child needs their parent. They turn to them for support, for wisdom, for love. But then life happens. They grow. They change. Their focus shifts. And suddenly the same parent who was once central to their world now feels like a distant figure. This is where many parents begin to suffer. Not because their child has stopped loving them, but because they are still holding on to an outdated role. They expect things to remain the same, but reality has moved forward. If your worth is dependent on being needed, then the moment that needs fades, you will feel lost. The Stoics understood this well. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This is not about loving less. It is not about disconnecting. It is about shifting from dependence to inner mastery. It is about strengthening your own mind, your own emotions, your own ability to remain whole, regardless of how others behave. So what does this look like in real life? It means choosing stillness over reaction. When your child is distant, you do not chase, you do not beg, you do not demand. Instead, you hold your ground. You do not let their choices dictate your emotions. You become the pillar of stability, the force that remains centered, whether they acknowledge it or not. And here is the paradox. When you no longer need their validation, you gain their respect. When you stop chasing, you become someone they naturally want to return to. Not because they feel obligated, but because your presence becomes something rare. Calm, steady, strong. People gravitate toward those who are centered. They are drawn to those who do not waver, who do not break under disappointment. Your child is watching you, even at a distance. They see whether you stand firm or whether you crumble when they pull away. And when they are ready, When life teaches them its own lessons, they will remember the way you carried yourself. Mastering yourself is not about suppressing emotion. It is about channeling it wisely. It is about recognizing that true strength is not in controlling others, but in controlling yourself. This is the practice. Every day you have a choice: to be reactive or to be unshakable, to beg for attention or to command respect through presence alone, to tie your worth to others or to stand tall in your own self-mastery. So ask yourself, where does your strength come from? Is it tied to others or does it come from within? The moment you stop seeking external validation and instead focus on mastering yourself, you become something unshakable. Master yourself, and the world will respond accordingly. There is no instant solution to mending a distant relationship. No single phrase, no perfect conversation, no sudden moment that will restore everything at once. True change begins with you. It begins with the way you carry yourself, with the discipline to release resentment, with the wisdom to love without expectation. You have learned that detachment does not mean disconnection. That respect is not something you chase, but something you embody. That silence, when used with wisdom, holds more power than raised voices. The story you tell yourself about your child's actions shapes your pain more than the actions themselves. That expectation breeds suffering, and understanding builds bridges. And most importantly, rebuilding a relationship is not about demanding change from them. It is about cultivating peace within yourself. This is not just knowledge. This is a practice, a discipline, a choice you must make every day. To be steady in your emotions, to be patient in your love, to be strong in your self-worth. Stoicism is not about suppressing feelings. It is about mastering them. It is about choosing the path that leads to wisdom over the one that leads to suffering. If you have felt the weight of distance between you and your child, I encourage you to reflect. Share your thoughts, your experiences, your struggles. Your story may help someone else who is on the same path. Let's grow together.